Oh, I'm having tech difficulties here. What happened, Matthew? All right, that's fine. Nope, still not working. All right, listen, you guys are about to hear a hardcore lesson from Austin Evans, the founder of MintStar Home Solutions, a company flipping the script on the lease-to-own housing. He's helping renters become real homeowners by pairing them with flexible programs and a local relation-first approach. So from affordable housing to affiliate expansion, Austin is on a mission to build trust, scale fast, and turn the average deal into long-term wins. Let's get into it. Welcome to the Closers Club, Austin. Welcome, my man. Most people hear lease to own, right? And they think it's just like rent with extra steps. They don't really understand. How do you guys actually make that work? And why is this a winning model, not only for investors, but for homeowners?
Thank you, David. Yeah, great question. So, option, your lease purchase, preferences of how some people like to do it. For us, we're very intentional with our vetting process, and we're very intentional about the people we work with to try to get them in the home. So, you know, your standard rent to own model, a lot of times people just like, if you have a deposit, they're like, okay, we'll throw you in there. And, you know, if you can make it work, you know, you end up buying the house. If not, then we might rinse and repeat. There's nothing wrong with it, you know, but what we do is, like, we vet them first. Then we have our underwriting vetting team that specializes in credit repair for lease to own and even seller finance. So they underwrite them, you know, kind of, you know, use like the BS detector per se, make sure they're legit, make sure their intentions are good. And if they end up needing it and if it's a good fit, then we pair them off with one of our two lenders and put the final blueprint. And usually our goal is to get them done within less than 12 months.
Wow.
So no prepayment penalty. And we're able to do that. Again, if they pass those three hoops, you know, it means that there's some good indicators that are going to allow them to do that, which means they probably have good income. It means that, you know, they're not like 10 years behind on their taxes. You know, they have a good down payment, and they actually are motivated to do it. Now we're going to do the heavy lifting for them. We, you know, work with people, obviously, through identity theft, the credit, you know, self-employment obviously is probably the number one. But we've dealt with all types of things. And our biggest thing is hand-holding, accountability, consistent follow-up. And that's what allows us to be able to get them done really quickly. Not saying it's not a little tedious at times. It is. But, you know, it's rewarding nonetheless. And, yeah, I think it's a great business model for anyone to get into. I mean, really the number one way we're getting properties right now is through referrals. I mean, as we know, the market is a little slow right now. It's in a lull, at least like kind of properties sitting on the MLS. And so a lot of our properties right now are coming from realtor partners that we work with that have fix and flips that are sitting there, and they're paying high interest with a hard money loan. And they're like, hey, help me get out of this. I don't want to be a landlord and rent this property long-term. I still want to sell it. And we're like, okay, well, we can kind of marry those two. Let's talk about it, right, with the program. Or just, you know, a realtor has a listing that's maybe a little far out, maybe just a little funky. You know, it might make sense as well for us to work with them in that capacity. So that's how we're getting most of our properties. Nice. It's definitely great for everyone, I would say.
Love it. I think what's fantastic about what you guys do is you're really going a step beyond what a lot of investors do. Because let's be honest, the real dirty side of, our business is that, people will do lease options or rent to own or things like that, land contracts where they'll take 5, 10, 20, 30, $50,000 up front. And they know that person has zero ability ever, to cash out or fulfill on their side of the deal. And, it's talked about so often at these, masterminds and events, and people are like, oh, it's just fantastic. You're just going to get free money and put in your pocket. And that's not looking out for the homeowner, right? And that's our job as investors, right? We're here to do good. So I love that you guys approach it from that perspective and do really vet these people and make sure that, if you're going to take their money, they do have the ability to see this all the way through. So how long have you guys been doing this?
So I've been in it for 7 years,
Nice.
full time. The company that I was with, I was former actually an affiliate of a company called Little Pink Houses for 6 years. And I was running North and South Carolina with them for my team. And then I was also coaching and mentoring people for their company. But then things just didn't add up and the company was kind of going downhill. So we decided to make a move.
Gotcha.
June, started working on starting the company. And the company really officially started probably early November.
Nice.
Here.
So for the people that are watching this and thinking, yeah, man, that sounds great. Lease options. I'm going to help people. I'm going to feel good about it. I can sleep at night. There's no hocus pocus like, wholesaling. Where are you finding the property? So you're finding a property, you're taking control of that somehow. So we could talk about that. And then your exit strategy with that property is to find a tenant buyer, I guess we're going to call them.
Yes, sir. Mm-hmm.
Cool. So kind of walk me through that, like where, you did talk a little bit about working with realtors, like where are you finding most of the properties? Like what's your acquisition strategy? And then you're taking title and then, you're finding these buyers. Talk about that a little bit.
So referrals again from it could be wholesalers that can't move deals. It could be fix and flippers that we know directly and or just realtors that either are working with fix and flippers or they have a product that has very little to
Say it. That Sam Kinison where he's in back to school yelling at Rodney Dangerfield, say it. We're going to miss all the good stuff here. 4 times we waited. Should I just keep going and let him think he's did this? Poor guy. I feel you. We have bad internet sometimes too. Where do you think he comes up for air at? These are the episodes to watch. This is what we should bet on. Do they have good internet? You'd think people are stupid when they email you like, make sure you have a stable internet connection. Like you think it's dumb, but I
don't even know
where he hails from.
No, where he cut off, so that if he comes back,
no idea.
Really?
Hey,
okay, yeah. I don't know what happened there. I don't know. It must be my Wi-Fi. I'm sitting right next to the router, so I have no idea.
I think you're gonna have to go in and come back because you're stuck on my side.
Okay, hold on. I'm gonna try to go on my phone. Let me try that.
Okay. Yeah. Well, let's restart this. Still only get 20 minutes, bro. I got another call after this. There you are.
Okay. All right. Hopefully no further issues.
That's okay. So the question is, first of all, I think this is great what you're doing, but how does your model work for those investors that are watching this and thinking, hey, this is really cool. I'd love to do something like this. Like, where are you getting properties from? Are you closing them in your own name? Are you using your money, creative deals? And then, is your exit strategy always the rent to own or lease option program?
Right. Yeah. So most of them are coming from referral base. Like I said, like it's either gonna be realtors, it could be fix and
Mhm.
flippers that we know directly, could
Mhm.
be properties that through one of those various sources have very little to no equity and
Mhm.
like just couldn't sell. Maybe they're cosmetically like a little outdated, but they're not in bad enough shape for like a
Mhm.
fix and flipper to go in there with a cash offer per se. So those are good properties for us. And yeah, most come from referral, but we do obviously cold call, and
Okay.
that could be for sale by owner properties, could be off market properties that
Right.
we're skip tracing lists. So it's a mixed bag, but I would say
Mhm.
most of them are coming from referral, probably 70% right now, just because we've been doing it for a while. So people know us
Mhm.
in North and South
Gotcha.
Carolina at this point pretty well.
Yeah.
Um, but yeah, and then as far as the like how we approach them, yeah, sometimes we will take title, like like especially if we're, let's say we're buying them cash, maybe we have a DSCR loan on there, maybe we bought them subject to. So certainly those we'll take title and we can turn around and utilize our program. We do that at times, but a lot of times we don't take title, right? Like a lot of times we have a set of paperwork, that allows us to kind of just contractually control the property, whether that's limited power of attorney, some type of agreement for deed that gives us some type of interest in the property that allows us to act on behalf or with the homeowner or the property owner. And then we just, market the property, find the buyer, and, we just kind of manage the process, and then it gets closed out, and obviously we can, make some money on the front end, the back end, just depending on the deal, obviously.
So kind of like a wrap lease option.
Yeah,
Okay.
yeah, sort of. Yeah,
Interesting.
it's very
Okay. So
similar.
because I think that's going to be the question, somebody watching this has like, hey, how many of these can I do a month? What can I expect to make, at least on the front side? And maybe we can talk just a little bit about like how you get that monthly spread and then the back end money. But yeah, how
Mhm.
many of these can I do if I want to add this into my existing, you know, property flow or business, right? How am I getting, these properties? You're saying you're taking a bunch of them maybe from realtors or wholesalers. Within those, like when you have to come back in and renegotiate and explain to the seller, like how difficult is that? Like what is that? Because of course those people, if they were listed with a realtor, we all know the problems with that, right? They have sky high expectations. Or if it was a wholesaler, then they thought they were going to get cash. And now you're coming in and going, hey, we really can't do that legitimately, right? There's obviously a problem why that deal couldn't be consummated. So like kind of talk about that a little bit. And I know that was a lot of stuff.
No worries. Yeah, so it's definitely a process, and I mean, I'm not going to say not every referral works out, right?
Sure.
Sometimes, you can negotiate, talk through, and it's not going to make sense. But yeah, ultimately, just try to highlight the pros. Obviously address the main concerns, which is, okay,
Mhm.
like how long is it going to be? What if there's any damages? How do you deal with that if they don't make their payments? Like, how do we address that? It's really just addressing those main concerns that most people have, and then obviously
Um,
trying to build the value, and then also pushing like, well, hey, like, are you motivated to sell the home? Because like clearly this other option isn't working. This is an option that we can move, and especially if you're in the industry for a little bit, and I mean, if you really hammer down on this, you will start to build up a buyer list, and you can confidently tell people like, hey, I have
mhm.
vetted buyers ready to go, right?
Okay.
And that's always like when you're talking to someone with the loaded gun, right? Or you got ammunition, obviously always is going to make you a little more confident. And,
Yeah.
when you're talking to that prospective client. So
Gotcha.
that's what we try to hammer in on.
Uh-huh. So if it's, a situation where you're just kind of getting involved in facilitating the transaction, um,
hmm
is that so that they're willing to take payments for a year or 2 years, something like that, just to cover I would assume the first thing is, hey, let me take the sub two, right? That would be the first option.
It certainly is something we talk about, especially if there's like very little equity. Obviously, if there's a lot of equity,
Hmm.
or a very minuscule mortgage, then it's kind of like, is it worth it? Is it easier just to go the contract route and not even do that? Then sometimes
Yeah.
we will. But yeah, if there obviously is very little to no equity, or they're behind on their mortgage, then certainly
Hmm.
we address that with them, just
Yeah.
on a case by case basis.
Gotcha. Do you
hmm
find it's harder to deal with a wholesaler referral, right? Because I'm assuming you're out there saying, hey, Steve, right? Hey, if you've got these deals you can't close, come to me. Let me see if we can fix it because you're
Yeah, pretty
probably a
much.
banana
Pretty
head.
much. I mean, we always tell everybody, I mean, like, because our approach always has been like, hey, like ultimately we are a buyer ourselves. So like we're gonna look at every deal as a buyer ourselves first. And we do have the ability to close. If it makes sense, we will close. But if it doesn't, then like, yeah, we have other options. And if it's a deal you're gonna lose or you can't move, then yeah, let's talk about it. Let's see what we can work out. I mean, ultimately, we want to help you make money on the deal too. If we can still help you make money and we make money, it's a win-win.
Yeah.
So,
Cool.
But
And,
yeah, I would
and
say realtors are probably a little bit, I would say a little bit easier.
really, I would have thought they would have been more challenging.
Well, okay, yeah. So I guess it depends. So certainly with my realtor partners that are familiar with us and we built a relationship long term, like those are the easiest now. But
Yeah.
yeah, I mean, if it's like off the cuff or random, I don't have any rapport built with them or no one
Yeah.
to recommend me, then yeah, maybe a wholesaler's a little bit easier in that sense. So yeah, I
I
guess
got
it
you.
just kind of depends.
Right.
Do you know them or do they know someone that that can help you build rapport? Or if you don't, they're random, then yeah, I'd say probably a wholesaler in that sense is probably a little bit easier.
Yeah.
Mhm.
Nice. Yeah. So I definitely get that conversation with the wholesaler. I guess with agents, it's just a lot of networking of, hey, Susie, if you ever get this deal, a house that you can't sell because maybe they owe too much, give me a call. Maybe we can work out something creative. I can still get you paid. Is that kind of the pitch?
Pretty much, yeah, pretty much, and just letting them know, like, hey, like it's not going to be as simple as 2.5%,
Yeah.
but we'll cut you in on the profit and whatever that is. I mean, it's still better
Mhm.
than you getting a listing canceled, right? And you not being able to
Yeah.
sell the home and make nothing.
Right. I know. And ultimately, all of us, agents and wholesalers, investors, we're here to help people, right? How do we solve their problem? You tried it your way didn't work. Are you open to doing something a little bit creative and, trying to turn maybe these dead listings of yours into some cash? I think that's a great plan.
Yes, sir.
Nice. Now, on the other side, where you're working with the occupant, the homeowner, the tenant buyer, I would imagine those are not hard to find. I would think you could post on some Facebook groups and have people knocking down your door.
Yeah, exactly. I mean, especially if you're like in that, like we'll call it median price point or below.
Yeah.
And as long as you don't have crazy requirements with, right? Like you're not saying, oh, I need $100,000 to put down, right? Okay, well, you're going to have a hard time finding someone that has $100,000 to put down. But if you can get most of your properties
Mhm.
median or below, and you can get, I would say, down payments between like 10 to 30,000 for most
Yeah.
properties, you're going to have a pretty good time, or not too difficult of a time finding people that can afford to do that.
Yeah, I see that a lot. I'm in a ton of Facebook groups, and I get emails from all over the country of investors, and I'll be like, $300,000 house mortgage or mortgage on this house is 300,000, entry fee $70,000. I'm like, bro, you're over 20%. Why in the fuck would I pay 26% when I can go to a bank and pay 20? Like the numbers I see people asking on these deals are just don't make any sense. And I don't know if it's one, they're greedy, or two, because it's in some group where they're all talking about sub two deals, or if it's that they're trying to shoehorn every deal into sub two and give the seller $55,000 and then still make, 25,000. I don't know what's your experience.
Yeah, I think it's a combination. It definitely seems like a combination. I think it's a lack of understanding, certainly a lack of guidance, and like having that feeling like, oh, I got something under contract. But like, if
Mhm.
you got something under contract that like is sky high, then you're doing us a disservice, you're doing yourself a disservice, and
Yeah.
you're really giving the homeowner a bad expectation.
Yeah. And I think these are the things that come back, and this is why we're being regulated all over the place, which kind of circling back to that, South Carolina, how does this strategy that you're doing work in South Carolina? Because, we all know that the laws are a little different there. They're a little more stringent.
Yeah, they certainly are. Yeah, I've been thankful that I've got a really good paralegal kind of title team that's worked with us on a lot of our deals, North and South
Mhm.
Carolina. So they've kind of advised us, how to navigate that. So it hasn't really affected us too much. Like we still wholesale deals. I mean, it's really just like for South Carolina, the marketing, right? Like you're
Mhm.
technically not supposed to really like go all over the place marketing, but like
Right.
assignments in themselves are not illegal. So it's like if you have a good
Mhm.
buyer list and you're off market, you're not really pushing it on a lot of platforms, then like you should be fine, right? Now, you're probably going to be a little bit more hard pressed to find, as many attorneys that are closing those deals or title companies, but there still are some out there, So it's just really like how you're approaching it. And we try to always be very transparent with the sellers that we're talking to. It's never like, oh, like we're trying to give them the runaround. It's like, hey, look, we're going to look at buying this ourselves, but realistically, there's a possibility that we're going to connect it over to somebody else because it doesn't make sense for us. And if so, your numbers are going to stay the same, and we're probably going to get paid a premium, and that's going to be where it is, And if they have a problem with that, then okay, when we move on. But yeah, I hate when people there's a lot of dishonesty and smoke shows, So just be transparent. Be transparent.
Yeah, no, for sure. I think there's a lot of just crazy stuff going on there. Do you find that since that law has passed, that it's easier to work in South Carolina? There's just less kind of competition?
I would say yes, because a lot of the like bigger like gurus and bigger personalities like the Jerry Nortons, the Pace Morbies, those people, like I would say a lot of them have kind of like you say, oh, well, watch out, stay clear of South Carolina. And I guess for good reason to a certain degree, like it keeps some people from getting out of trouble, especially if they're very like new, they're novices. But yeah, I think there's less competition. And it's like if you know what you're doing, you're using the right agreements, then yeah, I would say like, there's still deals out there. It's still worth operating in South Carolina. You just have to make sure you know what you're doing and stay up to date on all the laws. Educate yourself. You can't you can't afford to be uneducated.
Yeah, 100%. And that's, we put together a free report for everybody if you want to go download it. It's called The War on Wholesaling. Literally, it's thewaronwholesaling.com. And we break down the 21 different states that have restrictive laws that have come out against wholesaling. And like you said, let's talk about what really the law is, not what some, 20-year-old kid got on Facebook screaming about. These are the laws. This is, our attorneys have looked at this, and here are the solution. Here's how you can operate legally and ethically in that state. Austin, man, I appreciate you coming on. I do have one final question for you, really just to kind of sum it up. Why should more people, whether they're agents or investors or homeowners, be seriously thinking about lease purchases right now? What is it that's going on in the market, and why is this a good idea?
I mean, ultimately, there's always a large portion of people. I don't care how fast or slow the market is going. There's always a large amount of people that can't get their financing together because banks are not there to really, help people that are struggling or have a unique situation. They're just, you're ready to write the loan or you're not. And so I would say there's a demand. And then secondly, look at all the properties that are just sitting, so it's another way that you can help move those properties that are just sitting. You could help that homeowner who feels like they're stuck trying to sell right now in this market.
Yeah, I think what you're doing is fantastic. I love it. You're kind of filling in that sweet spot in the middle where, regular retail real estate has slowed down a little bit, because people think rates are going to come down. And, even though we're at a normal rate, they're waiting on the sidelines. You have people who can't quite qualify. So I love what you're doing. I love that you're bringing affordable housing. Those people, you're focusing on entry level to mid-level houses, which is the biggest part of the equation out there. And what really impresses me is that you guys go that extra mile and vet them on the front side and make sure that they're qualified, or at least there's a pathway for real, real home ownership. So I think that's absolutely great.
Thank you, David.
You bet, man. Well, listen, I know we tried a couple times to get you on here. I appreciate it. It was absolutely amazing. I love chatting with you. Hopefully we'll be able to do it again because I know your company does a lot of other things. What's the best way for people to find you, follow you, kind of learn a little bit more about you and your company?
So best way to get in contact with us is probably through email, just austin@mintstarhomesolutions.com.
Okay.
Website is the same, just minus the Austin at. So
okay. Awesome. We'll put all of that in the show notes if you're getting this in an email or you're watching this later down the road on YouTube. We'll make sure that we get all the information so that you can get connected with Austin. Austin, thank you so much, man. Appreciate you being on the Closers Club. We'll talk to you soon.
Thank you, David. Appreciate it.